Previously on online discussions.
Oftentimes in an online course, both students and instructors will question the purpose of the dreaded discussion board. Or people may question the effectiveness of the drive-by discussion, where the responses are only, "I agree," or "Great point." Interaction, both between students and the instructor and students with one another, is an important aspect of active learning.
So how do we create engaging discussion assignments?
Once these expectations have been established and addressed, then we can move on to really personalizing and developing interesting discussion prompts, which we will talk about in Part 2.
As we mentioned in Part 1, the second part of this discussion video will provide some examples of types of discussion questions or prompts. When coming up with discussion questions, the most important thing to consider is whether or not your prompt can truly stimulate a conversation. Your question should be open-ended, with several different paths a student may be able to take, and it should give students the opportunity to challenge each other and make each other think about the content. For example, in Romeo and Juliet, "Why did Romeo get banished?" is not a good discussion question because it is too fact-based. Romeo got banished because he killed Tybalt and the prince had had enough of his shenanigans. Wow, yeah. That's exactly what happened. That's what I said too. Wild. A more discussion-worthy prompt might be something along the lines of, how would Romeo's slaying of Tybalt be handled differently if it had happened in today's America, and how might that have affected the ending of the story? First, I'm going to assume that because there were witnesses to him killing Tybalt, Romeo would be charged with a crime and tried in front of a jury of his peers. Because he was a minor and his killing of Tybalt wasn't premeditated, his punishment would most likely be time served. With this in mind, the whole plot point of Juliet and Friar Lawrence conspiring to fake her death and reunite them wouldn't have happened. Instead, they may have conspired to break Romeo out. Both Romeo and Juliet had a tendency to overreact, though, so it's possible Juliet still would have stabbed herself. You make a good point. But I think one thing to keep in mind is that Romeo and Juliet's relationship would almost certainly have gone public during this trial. Given the family's attitudes toward each other, this would probably cause the Capulets to work harder to keep them apart. However, in today's climate, I think the Capulets would also be able and more willing to provide Juliet with the counseling she needs after these events and help circumvent the story's tragic ending. This is an example of a discussion question that connects the content to a real-world scenario. This video will provide some other examples for types of questions that can be beneficial in a discussion board. But keep in mind that while the discussion tool is called discussion, it isn't limited to only conversations. It is a space in your course where students are able to share and interact with one another in a variety of ways. The first type of discussion question we will look at is personal relationship with the content. An easy way to help students talk about content is giving them the opportunity to relate the content to themselves. The following example is from a leadership course, but could work in several other subject areas. Each week, you will post a one-paragraph self-reflection based on the leadership activities we do in class. Questions you can answer in this reflection include, but are not limited to, the following. What did you feel were your strengths and weaknesses in this week's learning activities? How do you feel about your own leadership skills based on this week's learning activities? How do you feel your leadership skills are improving? What steps can you take to become a better leader in the weeks to come? In this paragraph, you should demonstrate the communication skills needed to be an effective leader. After you have completed your own reflection, read your peers' responses and ask a specific question to 2 of them and respond to at least 1 question. Debate and controversial topics. Many instructors shy away from controversy in a discussion board, but putting some trust in your students and allowing them to debate respectfully can encourage excellent conversation. Here is an example from a religious studies course. After reading the assigned articles on euthanasia and watching the film How to Die in Oregon, answer the following question. Is euthanasia morally acceptable? Then respectfully respond to one of your peers who disagrees with you. You are expected to reply back and forth at least 3 times each using the evidence we have studied in the course. A current event. Focusing on current events and how they relate to course content is a good way to keep a discussion board fresh and allow students to talk about something they are interested in. Search 2020 political ad on YouTube. Choose one ad from a 2020 presidential candidate and post it here. Based on the strategies we've discussed this semester, describe 2 strategies the candidate is using to market themselves and explain why or why not you think these techniques are effective. Respond to 2 of your classmates who noted one of the same strategies you did and compare and contrast their chosen candidate's use of the strategy with your candidate's. Show and tell. Show and tell is another way for students to choose their own adventure, so to speak, in their discussions and allow them to relate the content to their own lives, the real world, or both. Each week, you will post an image, video, and/or description of a weather phenomenon you have encountered during the week. This can be something simple we all experience daily, or it could be a rare occurrence. Respond to 2 peers with questions or comments about their experiences and relate them to your own. Other possible ways we can use the discussion board include brainstorming for future projects, peer review, or a single topic discussed over a single semester. The online discussion is a tool that can be used in a variety of ways. Not all are mentioned here. The only limit is the instructor's imagination. Thank you.